All right, so now we are getting into the meat of today's podcast right here, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the NYSL, or formerly known as the New York Subliners Home Series weekend event. So I am going off the Build Your Bracket Builder on the official Call of Duty League website. You can find that at callofdutyleague.com. So in round one, you have the Paris Legion versus the Toronto Ultra, Right here, I would honestly just see a quick 3-1 for the Toronto Ultra. We get the rematch of the semifinals, if I'm not mistaken, at the Mutineers. It was 2 home series weekends ago. So, but it was between the Atlanta FaZe and the LA Guerillas. I just don't know about FaZe. We've been now for what, 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks now without the CDL action, so it is going to be a question mark with Atlanta FaZe and especially the LA Guerillas because they were really building up steam. So for the Atlanta FaZe, I'm going with them, man. They're still going to have their struggles, but I think there's going to be a 3-2 in that. So now going to the Group B, you have the Royal Ravens taking on the Chicago Huntsmen, where the Huntsmen are no longer a top 5 team, according to everybody else in the league. And going up against the Ravens, I believe it is going to be a very back and forth battle, pretty much, where Huntsmen will get 1 map, Ravens 2nd, Huntsmen 3rd, Ravens the 4th, and it all comes down to an S&D game 5. I'm taking Ravens. I'm just taking Ravens in this particular matchup, where the Chicago Huntsmen are just not looking that great. New York Subliners versus the Minnesota Røkkr. This is your marquee matchup for the New York Subliners Home Series weekend event, and they are taking on the Minnesota Røkkr, where I am taking the Subliners a quick 3-0 over the Minnesota Røkkr, and the Røkkr is just not performing like they should have been, or like they should be, like they were at the beginning of the season. So now in your knockout matches, you have the Paris Legion taking on the LA Guerillas, where I believe the Guerillas will get a 3-0 over the Paris Legion because it is online, and Paris is not doing that well, honestly, in online competition. The Chicago Huntsmen taking on the Minnesota Røkkr in a knockout matchup right here. I'm saying Huntsmen, but it is going to be a 3-1 victory for them, knocking the Minnesota Røkkr out of contention to play for Championship Sunday. All right, so now for qualifiers on Saturday, you have the Toronto Ultra taking on the Atlanta FaZe. This is going to be where I think FaZe finally figures out their struggles and gets a good 3-0 over the Toronto Ultra. You know what? Actually, I'll take that back. They have figured out things, but I think the Toronto Ultra will take at least 1 map on the Atlanta FaZe. So for now, knockout round 2, the Ultra versus the Guerillas. This is going to be a very tight one, ladies and gentlemen, but I am picking. It's really hard to decide between these two teams because they're very good. They really are. I mean, Guerillas made it to a semifinals. Toronto has knocked out big name teams. I believe they have knocked out the Minnesota Røkkr before, or at least got them into, knockout rounds. It's going to be a 3-2 between one of these teams, and I'm going to have to say it's going to be the Guerillas who win 3-2. Royal Ravens taking on the New York Subliners. I'm taking the Subliners in a 3-2 victory over the Ravens. So now, here it is. The Royal Ravens are now in knockout round 2 facing the Chicago Huntsmen. Are we going to see the Atlanta FaZe taking on the Chicago Huntsmen? Or are we going to see the Atlanta FaZe take on the Royal Ravens? We're going to see the Chicago Huntsmen taking on the Atlanta FaZe for the first time in Call of Duty League history, and we're going to get that before COD Champs, and it's going to be electrifying. So the Huntsmen is going to win 3-1 over the Ravens. So now we're into Championship Sunday, where your first matchup will be at the Atlanta FaZe taking on the Chicago Huntsmen, and then your second matchup will be the Subliners taking on the Guerillas. So, out of all the scrims that everybody sees on YouTube and Twitch and just wherever, the Huntsmen does not look good against FaZe. They didn't even look good against FaZe's academy team. So, what I'm saying is, Huntsman's going to get one map over the Atlanta FaZe, and then Atlanta FaZe is going to bounce back and win that round 3-1 over the Chicago Huntsmen, knocking them out of Championship Sunday. New York Subliners taking on the LA Guerillas. I'm taking the Subliners in a 3-0 dominant fashion, knocking the Guerillas out of contention for the home series title. Now you got the Atlanta FaZe taking on the New York Subliners. New York Subliners has a chance right here to become the second team to win their own home series weekend event. The only team that has done that right now is the Atlanta FaZe, and they are standing in the way of Subliners being that second team. So Subliners are going to take 2 maps above the Atlanta FaZe. FaZe is scared. You know, they don't want to lose another home series in dominant fashion. So they come back and get 3 wins. The reverse sweep in the Atlanta FaZe is your New York Series home series champions. And of course, every week will be another home series to go off of. So this whole month right here is going to be impactful, and I am ready for it. So, guys, I really hope you enjoyed that bracket right there. It's going to be a wild one, I honestly think. But the Atlanta FaZe have won their 3rd home series weekend event, and now they are tied with the Florida Mutineers. So, guys, that is all the time I have for today's episode of E-Tuesday presented by the Morgan Man Sports Podcast. But I sure hope you did enjoy, and if you did, make sure to like button wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, LinkedIn, or whichever social media platform that you are on. I'm posting daily with updates in CDL and Falcons news, so definitely make sure you're up to date with all that information. But again, guys, I'm out, and I, Cole Morgan, will catch you on this week's episode of Falcons Friday. Till then.